Welcome, everybody. Welcome. It's so good to have you all here at 13th and Locust for our program Cheers to McGillin's on National Beer Day. My name is Justina Barrett, and I serve as the Chief Learning and Engagement Officer here at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. We proudly serve as Philadelphia's Library of American History. Our collection consists of nearly 23 million manuscripts, books, and graphic items that tell the stories of all Americans, with particular emphasis in early American history, ethnic and minority history, science and industry, the arts, and genealogical research. And so now, as we move through our nation's 250th anniversary, we have the opportunity to reflect on America's founding, its growth, and its ongoing renewal. With our program this evening and the exhibit we have on view, we are able to examine how succeeding generations of arrivals to Pennsylvania continued the promise and founding ideals of the Revolution. The exhibit, Changing Faces of Independence, Pennsylvania in the 1800s, which is open and on view through April 24th, looks at Irish, German, and African-American migrations to Pennsylvania in the century after the Revolution. As we look at their documents, the archives that we have in our collection, we see those founding ideals. We see the importance of the freedom of religion. We see the importance of free enterprise and industrial innovation. And we see how cultural identity and ethnic identity are important in establishing a political voice in Pennsylvania. We'll hear tonight about the McGillins, an Irish couple who immigrated to the United States as one of the 1.8 million people from Ireland who fled the 1840s potato famine, as well as generations of anti-Catholic discrimination. In Pennsylvania, these men, women, and children worked in textile factories and coal mines. They dug canals and built railroads. And they also opened grocery stores and restaurants and taverns wherever their countrymen landed. And so auspiciously, today is National Beer Day, and we are delighted to celebrate it with the Irish. But I would be remiss if I did not bring attention to the importance of the German immigrants who came to Philadelphia and brought with them their beer preferences. Indeed, downstairs in the cases, you can see that thanks to the German immigrants of the 1840s, they brought us our preferred beer style, which is lager. And I know many of you are drinking it here tonight, and many of you get it when you're at a ball game, and you get it when you're out at a beer garden. That industrial innovation, they brought us cold fermentation, they brought us the yeast lager that they needed it, and the industrial expertise to manufacture it here to Philadelphia. So Philadelphia brought lager to the rest of the country. It was the center of lager manufacturing throughout the 19th century. Neighborhoods like Northern Liberties and Brewery Town were home to dozens of breweries, as well as tens of thousands of German immigrants who had the expertise and the drinking habits to make it stick. So raise your glass if you're in the room, and let's toast the rich and deep beer drinking history that is Philadelphia. Okay, so onwards to our webinar, onwards to our talk. A few housekeeping tips as we get started. The program is hybrid, so we have both people in the room and on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you want closed captioning, you can just hit the CC button. We will be recording tonight's program and sending it out to everybody tomorrow in an email from Zoom. So look for that, and we will have time for questions at the end. Our virtual audience can use the Q&A box throughout the program to put them in. All right, so now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers tonight, Irene Levy Baker and Christopher Mullins Jr. Do you want to come on up here? Irene is the author of Cheers to McGillin's, as well as several other publications, 100 Things to Do in Philadelphia and Unique Eats and Eateries of Philadelphia. She's also the owner of Spotlight Public Relations. And having worked with her on this program for the past few months, I could see why McGillin's has kept her around for was it 2 generations, 2 decades, and as you like to say, countless icy cold beers and corned beef Reubens, along with Chris Mullins Jr., who is the 3rd generation of his family to run McGillin's, McGillin's Old Ale House, right, 3 blocks away. He is the co-owner with his parents who have purchased the bar from his grandfather and great uncle. And I think what you're going to hear about tonight a bit is this bar has only been owned by 2 families in its 166-year history. So it is deeply embedded in the fabric of Philadelphia. It is deeply embedded in who we see ourselves as Philadelphians. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand it over to you, Irene. I think we're ready to go.
Thanks for coming tonight to hear us talk about Cheers to McGillin's, which tells the story of Philadelphia's oldest continuously operating tavern and one of the oldest in the country. As Justina said, I'm here with Chris. We're going to tell you about his story and his family's story. He's the 3rd generation of his family to own and operate McGillin's. And I am the author of the book and also McGillin's longtime publicist. I haven't been around as long as Ma McGillin, but I've been around a good long time. I've been McGillin's publicist for more than 20 years. And almost every day of that 20 years has been an adventure, right? From being on every morning show to being a clue in the New York Times crossword puzzle. And writing this book was sort of the icing on the cake, or the garnish on the cocktail, if you were. It was a way of capturing, it was a legacy, a way of capturing the stories that Chris and I have been researching and telling for so many years. You might ask, does a bar need a book? And I would say, yeah, this one does. You want to tell them why, Chris?
Well, we've been asking ourselves that for years. Do we really need to put our stories and secrets on paper for the rest of the world to read? But fortunately, Irene is a great writer and an excellent diplomat, so there's not too many salacious stories in there. But she's done an amazing job of tying our history, past and present, together in a very beautiful book, and is very flattering to us. So we appreciate it, and we recognize how hard and how much energy she exerted to put this book together. But in the book, you'll read all about the founding of McGillin's in 1860, the 2 generations that have owned it, the McGillin family and my family, the Mullins Spaniak family, 3 generations in each family as well too. And all of the triumphs and the challenges through world wars, pandemics, just you name it, and we've seen it. There's a special section about the fire that you'll see tonight that occurred at McGillin's, the worst fire, and we cover that pretty extensively as well. And then there's the fun romance stories, the family stories, and we're lucky enough that Ed Rendell was able to write the foreword for the book as well. Back in his days as a DA, he would sneak over and have a nice BLT for lunch at least once or twice a week. In fact, our BLT is named after Ed Rendell, better late than never, because though he came, he was always late. We were always proud of that, though. He was always there for us. So take it away.
So it all started with William McGillin, who was called Pa, because he and Ma, Catherine McGillin, raised their 13 children upstairs. Pa opened the bar in 1860. You want to tell his story?
Sure. Yeah, he was an Irish immigrant. He came over from Ireland and County Tyrone in Northern Ireland about 1847-ish, and did what most Irish immigrants could safely rely on to make a buck, and he opened a tap room, a small tavern, of course not realizing that it was going to last so many generations. His first wife passed away at an early age, And unfortunately, yeah, he was left alone and met his wife, his future wife, Catherine, and they had these 13 children that you see in this family photo. Yeah, it was quite an extensive family. They raised their children above the bar. It's hard to believe that you could fit all those kids on the second and third floor of McGillin's, but they did.
And to give you an idea, 1860, that was the year that Abe Lincoln was elected president. That's how long McGillin's has been around. I used to say that's how long McGillin's has been on Drury Street. But in researching the book, we found out that's not quite true.
Yeah, so it's a little humbling because we've been telling people forever that McGillin's was founded in 1860 and always existed on Drury Street since 1860. But there's quite a few references that for the first 10 years or so, McGillin's, which was then first known as the Bell in Hand, was on Moravian Street, exactly on the spot where the Union League is today, right in the middle, right under the ballroom section. The photo that you see was provided by the Historical Society, so thank you so much. And you can see this is before the Union League was built, and somewhere back there is probably the McGillin family home and the ale house. Sometime around, you can see there's some dates. Sometimes they contradict themselves because it's in their the public records from obituaries and references to the location on Moravian Street. So hopefully someday we'll get more information, and I would love a photo would be great. If anybody knows Jim Mundy from the Union League, however, he's the former historian and archivist. He insists that it's not true, that McGillin's was located at where the Union League stands today, but I think we have enough proof to prove him wrong.
And we believe that McGillin's moved to Little Drury Street, just a couple blocks from here, before 1871, because that's the first liquor license we have hanging at McGillin's is 1870, with that address on Drury Street is 1871.
Yeah, that was another thing. We always would say, well, we have every license dating back to 1860, but it was really 1871, and now it makes sense why it's 1871. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how all those things come together when you start doing a little research. Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about Pa McGillin and?
Sure. Yeah. Pa McGillin was all about beer. Back then, in the 1860s, you didn't necessarily come to McGillin's for anything more than a pint of beer and maybe some bread and oysters. It's very basic. He loved his beer. He was considered, even back then, one of the finest brewers in the country. He had vaults under the building, under Drury Street. Supposedly there was tunnels. It was overflowing with kegs and vats of beer. He actually died on the property in 1901, August 31st, 1901, cleaning up after workmen who were installing the first central heating system for any bar or restaurant in Philadelphia. Upon his death, his wife, Catherine, took over. She was a force to be reckoned with. She tolerated only the proper behavior, no talk of religion, no talk of politics, no singing or loud talking were permitted.
Do you still enforce that rule?
We try. We try, except for karaoke nights. That you can sing as loud as you want. She would be horrified. But she ran a very tight ship. She would not tolerate drunkenness. She would, tap a sailor on the back or tug at their ear to tell them it's time to head out. And she really picked up where William left off, and then some. If you saw on the opening screen, and this is this middle picture, this is the original photo of McGillin's from, well, sometime clearly before 1901. It was a 3-row homes that William assembled over his 40 years owning the business. As his family grew and the business grew, they would buy the adjoining properties. He loved how this looked. He loved that it was well worn. Even back then, it was famous, as I mentioned. All the floors from the workman's boots would wear away, and he would just add another layer of wood on the floor. And so everything was off kilter. And in his obituary, which I found here about 18 years ago, which none of us had ever seen, it talks about how members of the Philadelphia Club pleaded with him and even offered to fund a proper English-Irish tavern that would just be more reflective, I guess, of their needs. And he said, no, this is the way I want it. And I love this picture because every sign that you can see, and it's a little hard, it's a little blurry. There's a more clear one, I think, in the book. References McGillin's or McGillin's Ale or the different styles of beer. It's really fascinating. And then off to the far left, you'll see there's 2 doors with the Palladium window. And in between those 2 doors there's a sign, and it's a carved wooden Bell in Hand. And it reads the Bell in Hand Ale House, which is what McGillin's was originally known as. And that sign hangs at McGillin's today over the bar. So that's definitely our most precious item.
So how did that transition happen between the look in the middle and the look on the right, which is what McGillin's looks like today? On McGillin's 50th anniversary, Pa was dead. It was Ma's turn. And Ma changed the name from Bell in Hand to McGillin's because that's what everyone called it anyway. They would say, let's go to McGillin's. And she redid the facade. And that's what you see today, the facade on the right. Also, it's worth noting that lovely picture of Ma McGillin, we never had that until we started researching the book. We also found that picture here at the Historical Society. And it's quickly become one of our favorites. So Ma's greatest wish, Prohibition happened in 1920. Her greatest wish was to live long enough to see the end of it. Because those were a tough 13 years. But on April 7th, 1933, the beginning of Prohibition, the end of Prohibition started, and they were allowed to, that was 93 years ago today, which is why today is called Beer Day. So you guys picked the right way to celebrate. On that day, McGillin's did not waste any time. At 12:01, the doors opened. There was a crowd in Drury Street that the Inquirer called the largest crowd that McGillin's had seen in its then 73-year history. When Ma didn't get there to open the door, on that newspaper article on the right, that's Mercedes, her daughter, and 2 of her sons who opened the door. Apparently it was raining that night. She lived long enough, but she couldn't make it in the rain. When they opened the door, the crowd let out a roar, but they still had to wait 2.5 more hours before the beer truck actually got to McGillin's and they got their first taste of legal beer. So she did live long enough. What happened at McGillin's during Prohibition? Well, that's an interesting question.
So, yeah, there's many theories, many stories. The official story is there was a dairy. We operated as a dairy with a farm called the Homestead Farms that were located in New Jersey, and we sold ice cream and milk and very light sandwiches and very boring, right? But we believe, and we've heard stories, that the second floor of McGillin's, which was carved into a series of smaller rooms and had a secret staircase in the back going upstairs, that there was some tea being served upstairs. There's some truth, though, I think. So many places were not able to sustain the 13 years of waiting to reopen. We were so close to City Hall. It was easy for them to some of the politicians to sneak over and sneak a quick one.
We know there are tunnels underneath.
In the tunnels, so
Midtown Village.
it definitely it could be. It could be. We're looking for all you researchers out there to find more.
And Ma really liked rules, and she followed the rules.
And she didn't drink. And she didn't drink ever.
So
yeah,
there's some question.
Yeah, the middle front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer from April 7th, 1933. That photo was taken at McGillin's. If anybody remembers, and we're going to touch on it a little bit, but the buffet, that is the original buffet when they would pre-prohibition give away food. This day, I'm sure they didn't charge anybody for it either. They probably couldn't keep up with it, but I think that's a great photo too.
So Ma lived long enough to see the end of Prohibition. Every one of her birthdays was a big deal. She had a big birthday party every year. On her last birthday, when she was 89, 4,000 people came to celebrate?
She'd hand out carnations on the street.
And we still do.
Yes, and we still do today. But she handed out that day 4,000 carnations. That's impressive.
She did say she had one regret in life, that her sons wouldn't allow her to ride the Hindenburg. When she died at 89, her daughter Mercedes and two of her sons took over the bar. And that's a picture of Mercedes. We actually got it from the McGillin's family, who shared Mercedes scrapbooks with us. And it was remarkable to go through the scrapbooks and find old wedding pictures and personal letters and notes. And we really are grateful to them for sharing all those things with us. When the brothers died, Mercedes ran the bar with a nephew until 1958. When
I thought he got fired before that.
when the bar changed hands for the first time. So it was in almost 100 years, it was with the McGillin family, and then it changed hands to the Shapaniak Mullins family, where it's been now for 3 generations. That first picture is Christopher's grandfather, great uncle, 2 great uncles, right? But it was actually owned by his grandfather and 1 great uncle, Henry and Joe. When they retired, they sold it to Christopher's mother, Mary Ellen Mullins, and her husband, Chris Mullins Sr. And Christopher's the 3rd generation. And we're going to talk about each of those 3 generations. When the 2 brothers, Joe and Henry, owned it.
Jump in here. Yeah, so, well, one thing, going back, that one picture of my grandfather and my great uncle, my 2 great uncles, that is from the 100th anniversary of Schmidt's Brewing Company. That day, a carriage of horses came and pulled up there. I think there's 6 million barrel of that year, and delivered it to McGillin's, and it was a big deal. And the interesting thing is that McGillin's and Schmidt's shared exactly the same starting year, 1860. So again, we're very fortunate that we're still here. And if anybody knows Von C Brewing Company out in Norristown, they're the descendants of the Schmidt's Brewing family. We have a nice relationship with them. So my grandfather was moonlighting at McGillin's. He worked in the DA's office, bartended on weekends, and heard that McGillin's was potentially going to be sold. It really, unfortunately, it wasn't being run very well. There was all kinds of, we have records of the FBI doing stakeouts in the bar and serving underage kids and prostitution. And we were talking earlier about kind of the change in this neighborhood, as you got into the 60s, and some of that started to be felt at McGillin's. And the McGillin's family, by the third generation, they were doctors and they didn't want to run a bar. And so nobody really took interest except for my grandfather and my Uncle Joe. They took over. They inherited a bar that was sleepy, and they really worked hard to rebuild the business. They did the buffet, the lunch buffet was continued. That was hang on from the McGillin's family. Mom McGillin was a cashier. This is my Aunt B, my grandfather and uncle's sister. She was a cashier, if any of you were here. Up until probably 1994, she was a cashier. So a lot of people still come in and ask for her. She wasn't the nicest lady, but she was memorable. And then, moving on, it was running a bar is tough. It is today and was then. But in 1971, there was a pretty devastating fire. And these pictures have really never been seen either until this book was published. On a Saturday night in August, KYW reported McGillin's was on fire. My grandfather was driving to the beach to Brigantine, and he had to turn the car around and come back up. And when he got back, they found a very devastating fire. But the band still played while the fire was raging, and allegedly, according to the newspaper, playing "Come On Baby, Light My Fire," and the customers were blowing out the candles on their way out the door. So we a lot of memories and a lot of tragedy too. McGillin's, if you can picture the earlier photo, it's a 2-story building, but prior to the fire, it was a 3.5-story building. And unfortunately, a lot of great mementos and papers and things went up in that fire. So we're lucky that we have what we have. The fire started on the second floor, which back then was the kitchen, and it went straight up, which is why, again, we're lucky that the first floor still retains the character that it does today.
And in 1993, the second generation of the family took over, Mary Ellen and Chris Mullins Sr., Christopher's parents.
And we say when my parents bought it from my grandfather and my uncle, they took over a business that was very similar to the business that my grandfather and my great uncle took over in 1958. They were older. As we know, Center City was not at its finest in the early 90s. So the business suffered. McGillin's was closed at 6 p.m. on a Saturday night. Closed on Sundays, stayed open till about 10, maybe 12 on a Friday night. So it was pretty sleepy, well loved, but sleepy. And my parents saw a vision. They believed in Ed Rendell and his vision for Center City and the opening of the convention center. And it felt to them that the time was right. The one thing that he struggled with, because they were stressed. I remember I was a senior in high school when they bought it, and it was very stressful. And my father was exploring ways to make McGillin's stand out from the rest. And it was just at the beginning of the craft beer movement in '93. There was a handful of great breweries, or budding breweries. And one of them was Stout's Brewing Company that was located in Adamstown. And he partnered with Carol and Ed Stout, asked them to produce an ale and a lager. They made the Scarlet Lady and the Genuine Lager, both great beers from a great German lineage, and sold their beers until the brewery closed during COVID, unfortunately, and the Stouts retired. So that was like the real thing, the first real change in McGillin's. And my father and my mother, they brought ale back into McGillin's old ale house. And the only downside, and people still come in today and ask, what happened to the buffet that I was talking about? And they'll come in and they walk in at lunch and say, where's the buffet? That's been closed since 1995. And that's why it's closed. If you came more often, it would still be here. But in that picture here, right in the middle is Tammy, the blonde girl, right in the woman in the middle. She is still our day bartender. She started when she was 18 years old. She works here today and has raised a family here at McGillin's and part of our family.
Now she's a grandmother.
Now she's a grandmother.
And then the third generation, when Christopher joined the business in 2006.
And it's my least favorite part of this presentation, so sorry if I'm rushing it. But yes, I was fortunate to be raised in this family of bar owners. Never necessarily thought I was going to get into it. I was encouraged not to, just like the third generation of the McGillin's family, but it's in my DNA. I went to the hotel school at Cornell, and that kind of solidified my future, I think. I don't know if my parents were happy about that or not, but I did spend time at the Union League as well. Again, just honing my skills and learning the business to give another different perspective to the bar. One of my proudest moments is the greening of Drury Street. If anybody remembers what Drury Street looked like 5+ years ago, it was pretty disgusting. There were 40 dumpsters that lined the block. As Midtown Village boomed, everyone thought, oh, here's a great place to hide our trash. We'll put it on Drury Street. So it was a battle. And unfortunately, there's so many alleys in Center City today that look like Drury Street did. And I think now we have a great model of with committed neighbors, some public help, and a lot of screaming, you can make our small streets pleasant. And I encourage you to come to Drury Street, especially after we plant it over the next few weeks. I also had the opportunity to be in a Modelo commercial, which you can Google that later. I was flown to Mexico City and got to be in it, one of the fighting spirit ads that they did that covered immigration, which was a really exciting opportunity and a chance for us to highlight our immigration history. And then very briefly, we survived Prohibition, we survived COVID, and that was
our second pandemic.
Our second pandemic, that's right, after the Spanish flu. And that was a time that we'll all forget quickly, I think, dining outside in the snow and plastic shields and umbrellas, but it was part of our history.
So of all the things that I work on at McGillin's, my very favorite is probably the love stories. More couples have met, had their first date, or gotten engaged in McGillin's than anywhere else in Philadelphia. Just to prove my point, there's a couple here tonight that dated, had some of their very first dates at McGillin's. I'm convinced that there is mating magic at McGillin's. It's way better than an app. That first picture of the couple in their wedding gear, they both ran the Broad Street run in the rain. Neither one of them wanted to come to McGillin's, but their friends dragged them that afterwards to celebrate. He approached her. She turned him down. And then the following weekend, they saw each other again. And she's like, well, if you're going to try twice, and look where they are now. On the left are Nisha and Mike. Nisha was there with her girlfriends. He was there with his guy friends. One of the guys said to Nisha, my friend thinks you're cute. And she said, which friend? They got married this last summer. There are some newlyweds. And down below are Dave and Eileen. Eileen had a broken engagement and came to McGillin's with her girlfriends to drown her sorrows. She met Dave that night. Sometimes things are just meant to be. They come back every Christmas with their daughters, and that middle picture is his engagement, it's his wedding ring where it's engraved, "Forever McGillin's." And they're not the only ones. We have 4 guest books signed by couples who met or had their first dates, got engaged at McGillin's, including, if that bride looks familiar, that's Gabby, who's been a manager at McGillin's for over 20 years. She also met her husband at McGillin's. He had just moved here from Texas. He Googled, where can I get the best wings in Philadelphia? And he found Gabby. They are one of very few couples who were lucky enough to get married at McGillin's. And you can see their officiant back in the back of that photo. Caitlin and Ashley got married, got engaged at McGillin's during Christmas time. And Ashley's social media profile said, she mentioned in her dating profile something about McGillin's. So they had their first date at McGillin's. And when she proposed, she said, I love you more than McGillin's. And Kim and Greg on the bottom are 2 songbirds. They met doing karaoke. He heard her sing, wanted to meet her, and the rest is history. They now have 2 beautiful daughters. So there is definitely something in the water, or as Chris Sr. says, maybe in the beer at McGillin's. Now, we mentioned Gabby, who's been with us for more than 20 years, who's on the bottom there. She's a longtime manager. Next to her is Tammy from the sandwich bar. Remember that 18-year-old? Now she's a grandmother. She's the daytime bartender. You want to talk about some of those other pictures?
Sure. The top left, that's John Doyle. So anybody that's really spent much time in McGillin's knows John. He's been working at McGillin's for 52 years. He's 82 years old today. He now in his semi-retirement just does Saturdays, but that's when most people like to come and see him, right? You get a good laugh, and he takes care of you and can tell you a nice old story about McGillin's early days. We're so fortunate to have him. We're not going to let him go. I tell him he'll be working in a wheelchair if I can help it. And then to the right, that's Cassie and Shayna. She's now retired. She retired during COVID. She worked at McGillin's for over 40 years. And that's her granddaughter, Shayna, who's worked for us for now about 10 years. So we love for us, I mean, a bar is a bar, right? But to have the history, the stories, and a great staff that is so dedicated. To the right is our kitchen staff, the unsung heroes of McGillin's, the people that no one ever gets to see. And thank, and they all are so proud of the jobs that they have. The jobs that they do, because they really work so hard every single day. Our kitchen is surprising about, we're not just a sandwich place. We're not just for wings. We do have a very full, extensive menu. I particularly like this photo because some of our most special people are in this photo. And some of those most special people that are in here also did not make COVID. So 4 of the people in this photo passed away during COVID, which left a huge void for us, because you see we're all about history and family. So forever missed.
I think it says something when people stick around that long. McGillin's is also known for attracting celebrities. Maybe you've read in the news now and then when Jason Kelce stopped by during the last Super Bowl parade. It was amazing. He not only bought a round of drinks for everyone on the first floor, but he went downstairs and met the kitchen staff, which was really thrilling. That's Buddy, the cake boss.
With Ivy, who is, if you've ever had a sandwich or a salad at McGillin's, she's made it. She's been with us for 40 years. She and John are the only two employees that work for my grandfather, my father, and I, and me.
Yeah, Cassie used to say that the little boy she used to chase around the bar became her boss. You recognize that guy in the upper right-hand corner. We were really thrilled when he stopped at McGillin's. We do like to say that we don't play favorites. We'll hang anybody's picture that comes to McGillin's. If you have another favorite politician, invite him over. We would love to see any politicians of any party. We're always up for a party. And down below is, maybe you recognize Martha Plimpton if you watch Task. She stopped by several times when she was in town filming that. And we get lots of professional athletes and other kinds of celebs. Some we talk about, some we don't. It really depends on
their behavior.
I was going to say their wishes.
What happens at McGillin's stays at McGillin's.
And a lot of our customers become famous to us too. This is Dr. Crone. He celebrated 75 consecutive birthdays at McGillin's. He passed away recently in his 90s. And you can't make these stories up. The young boy next to him is his great-grandson who came to McGillin's to celebrate his 21st birthday. I know, don't you love that?
And I just will say, Dr. Crone, he's the only person I ever met that had said he had met Mom McGillin when his grandfather would take him to McGillin's as a young kid. So, which is really cool.
But every customer who comes to McGillin's is special to us. It's not just about the famous people or the people who've been here a long time, but everyone who walks through the doors. It's really important to take good care of. McGillin's is committed to that. And we always say, if only the walls could talk. But the truth is, it's probably a good thing they can't. But speaking of the walls, our walls are covered in Philadelphia
signage and other souvenirs. So if you've never been to McGillin's, you get a little feel of the ambiance. But this collection on the back wall, the east wall of the bar, has all of the former department stores from Philadelphia's past. So, and they've all been pretty much given to us by the staff or owners of the building or the retail store. For example, Wanamaker's, when Wanamaker's closed, John Connors, who's a very good friend of ours, he bought the building through when he owns Brickstone, and they brought the sign over to my parents when the store closed. Mr. Strawbridge, I'm drawing a blank, Francis, yes, thank you, brought over the seal of confidence from Strawbridge and Clothier. We have the Gimbels, the Lip Brothers signage, and then a lot of, some of the smaller places, restaurants, De Cheminée, sign from the Warwick. And you can see on the left side, Lebec Fen. It's the only sign that we had to buy. It's the only sign that we had to buy.
And pick up at midnight.
And pick up in the middle of the night too. Yeah. So he drives a hard bargain. always has. And yeah. And our electrician and I literally at midnight, the day it closed, we were able to go and we had to saw it off the front of that round apart. Yeah, it was interesting. But it's part of our history, and he wanted a lot of money for it, and we did not pay a lot of money for it. So that's
And our newest sign, unfortunately, is Macy's.
And Macy's, yes. So one of the security guards from Macy's, who was tasked with removing the sign, secretly brought one over to us too. So that's on the wall as well. And then you can see on the right is our karaoke stage. We have a nice collection of sheet music. A lot of stories are on the wall from the connection that McGillin's had to the theater district back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. it was a thriving area with theaters, the Garrick theaters, where the F1 store is, where West Elm was. So the actors and actresses used to sneak in the back door during intermission. And the story always was that the second half of the show was always better than the first because of McGillin's. A couple drinks later, and they just let it all loose.
So we've touched on some of the stories you'll find in Cheers to McGillin's. If you would like a copy, you can get it here tonight, signed. You can also pick it up on our website, mcgillins.com, or at our shop, which is just down Juniper block. We do have a new shop where we sell some of the kind of things you see here today. You can also get it on Amazon and at bookstores. So we hope you'll be interested in learning more about McGillin's. And Justina, do you want to talk about? Yeah, oh yeah. Let's take some questions. Yes?
We're going to run mics because we're on Zoom, okay?
So several bars in my old neighborhood that I would frequent always had ladies' entrances. And I was wondering if McGillin's had a ladies' entrance, or could they walk through the front door like everyone else? And if they could, or when, or if they couldn't, when were they allowed to walk through the front door?
So that history may have been lost in the fire. However, and there's postcards over there, so please help yourself after when we're finished. But we recently, one of our former bartenders moved to Florida, and he was talking to his friend, his roommate or something. His roommate said, "Oh my gosh, I think my uncle worked at that bar in Philly." And he met the uncle, and the uncle had in his house a black and white photo of McGillin's, which we had never seen before. That's the other cool thing about this world with the history, is discovering, you think you've seen it all, and these little snippets keep popping up. And in that photo, you'll see it, there's a sign on the side door that says ladies entrance. So I think we always assumed there, if you know McGillin's, on the side of the bar where the steps are, that was a separate room. Up until it's ironic, 71, they tore that wall out. 71 is when we had the fire. Maybe we were cursed, right? We weren't supposed to remove that wall. But that was the ladies' dining area. And then in the 60s and 70s, my mother was telling us it was called the cheater's room, because that's where you would go so nobody would see you. But yeah, so that's the only real difference between now and what Mom McGillin built in 1909. But yeah.
I'm curious how you balance modernity with such a traditional space. I think more specifically, we've seen like a rise of craft cocktails and like mixology and an expectation of those sorts of things at a lot of restaurants. How do you balance that in terms of being a legacy space for ale and beer forward drinks?
Well, it's a lot easier to serve a beer than it is to make the really craft cocktails. We'll give craft cocktail bars their due, because it's very hard. But Gabby, who was in a lot of these pictures, she loves the craft cocktail side. I think it also connects very nicely with Instagram and photographing, and so we balance it without getting too off of our vision of the beer. Again, we have to stick with what we do, and it's McGillin's Old Ale House. It's super important to us to stay on brand. I think it's like everything else at McGillin's. We look old, but behind the scenes we're modern. We have technology and such. So it's a nod to our history and stay true to our history, but you have to change ever so slightly with the times to be relevant. Because the other reality is that beer consumption is dropping precipitously in America. So fortunately, we do have some of the not, again, I would never tell somebody that is a purist for the cocktail world to you're going to love everything about McGillin's. But if you like to have a cocktail in an environment that's very social. And that's the other thing too, with online dating and people being less social. I think McGillin's has been able to be a place, I guess, a magnet for people that like to have a nice time, like to be social, like to sit at communal tables. Fortunately, there are still people out there that's a kind of a mission for them, because that's kind of our people.
Why is beer consumption declining?
Well, health reasons, I guess, right? I mean, you see people like they want a vodka soda or tequila water, because less calories. I think just options, right? There's the Trulies and the RTDs, the ready to drink cocktails, and stateside. It's trends. We saw, 20 years ago, we were serving 90% beer. Now it's 50-50. So we still sell a lot of beer. But yeah, I mean, now the whole THC movement, that's a topic of commerce, not for us. I mean, it's hard enough to sell liquor to people, right? To add in some of these other options, it's a little scary, frankly, but it comes up with almost every salesperson in the industry. People talk about it constantly. There's just so many more competing factors. Plus, at the same time, if you're sitting at home, you're not out, maybe you are partaking in some of the more illegal options too. So, I mean, there's so many factors. Fortunately, again, we still sell a lot of beer. COVID was probably, 2022, 2023 were our busiest years we've ever had. Thank goodness. So, things are starting to regulate a little bit, and I think that's good. Sometimes being too busy is a little too much for us. Yeah, it gets to be a little too crazy.
Did you say who's making your beer now? You said Stouts did.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So when Stouts, Carol and Ed retired, we were devastated. We were professional partners. We were personal friends with the Stout family. So it was very devastating to us. And we looked and interviewed and discussed and chatted with all of the major brewers. It had to be a brewery that could handle the volume. To be honest, some of the volume of our ale, our lager, and our IPA may be some of the smaller breweries' entire production. So it had to be a brewery that we could count on, that could get us the beer when we need it and be fresh and well respected. And so we work with Trogs. They've been an awesome partner. We're their only bar that they produce custom beers for, and we're really proud of that.
Any other questions? Looks like one more, and then we will wrap up.
So I actually have two questions. The first is, what's your favorite thing on the menu? And then the second is, what is your favorite personal memory that you have there?
I mean, I'm a sucker for the RB McGillin. It's our roast beef sandwich at au jus, kind of like a French dip. We roast our beef every single day in-house. Likewise, our turkeys. So again, and my mother, up until COVID, she'd be down in the kitchen every day coming up with some great specials and the seasonal items that were delicious. I'm a traditionalist, so the hot roast beef sandwich. And probably my favorite memory is, and we didn't go to McGillin's a lot as a kid. I grew up in Ballackinwood. Coming downtown was a treat, and I probably would only go if I was getting dropped off, because my grandmom was hostessing on the second floor. And I just remember being up there and having Cassie up there and stacks of coffee cups. It was just such a unique place. And between the first floor with the buffet and the second floor of the restaurant, that's probably it's definitely my earliest, but it's one that's always stuck with me as well. And then, of course, having the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and then Jason Kelce coming unexpected on the parade day was a real treat. And I think the picture showed he went down to the kitchen and took pictures with our staff too. And that's where I think, he's a real gem.
Well, thank you, Chris and Irene. Let's show our gratitude to them. The publication is available for purchase on site tonight as well as online. We'll be sending everybody a follow-up email. We'll have a link to their website. We'll have a link to the recording. Again, just thank you for this truly Philly institution. I mean, you mentioned Center City, and I think it is a testament to the resilience of Philadelphia, the resilience of Center City. We are so proud to be your neighbor in the shadow of City Hall, right off of Avenue of the Arts, deep in the neighborhood right here. It's a delight to share this city with you. So thank you for that. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, just by joining us here, you're supporting us. Really take that call to action seriously as we come into America 250. If you want to advance to our final slide, we have one call to action for you. So take out your phones, and if you're at home, you can do this on your screen too. If you scan that QR code, right? No, they're like right now, get it out. Both the Historical Society of Pennsylvania and McGillin's are nominated for a Liberty Bell Award. This is from the Visit Philadelphia or Visit Philly's Liberty Bells. We are nominated for History Made Whole. So we don't just do the 18th century. So we're going to be doing that this summer. We're going to have the Declaration of Independence, the first printer's proof on view here at HSP starting May 7th. So we do the 18th century, but as you can see, we bring it up and we bring it broad and wide and deep. So vote for us and then vote for McGillin's. Do you have your mic? What categories are you nominated for?
Most Philly vibes and where you'd bring your friend.
Yes. So do all that now. You can vote every day through Friday. So do that. If you're not connected to our newsletter, it's hsp.org/enews. And we'd love to see you here again at 13th and Locust. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.